Hey, welcome back to the Executive Exhale podcast. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening via a podcast channel, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here today. This is a difficult conversational piece I want to bring to the table today. I recently had an online interaction that reminded me of the importance of breath and thoughtfulness when we're responding to things that trigger us. I more specifically want to talk about whether you're a leader or whether you're just in your life generally, when you feel the need or the urgency to speak up, there's a few things I want to bring to the table today that I was keenly reminded of during this interaction that I want to bring to you today because maybe it'll be helpful and maybe it'll help you when you feel triggered the next time you do. I just want it for context. I'm not here to air dirty laundry at all. It was just an online interaction with a former colleague where I saw a comment around bias in the workplace and that the statement essentially articulated that they would rather have somebody who is qualified rather than somebody who is picked because of a diversity and equity and inclusion criteria. I got very offended by that because as somebody who is part of that DEI group, as a woman who's experienced sexism in leadership my entire career, I got highly triggered by it. And I also worked with some very professional people of a variety of different backgrounds and races and cultures and religious beliefs who are extremely competent. And so, even if the context of that comment was not to be taken literally, the reality is just even just making that comment in a public forum articulated to me that there was an underlying level of bias there that existed. Because one who's an ally would never say something like that. So I got very triggered. And I just want to remind all of you out there that it's okay to get triggered by something. What's not okay is the how you respond to it. And what I want to bring to the table today is how I responded to it was not okay. And that's what I want to bring to the table today as my moment of vulnerability and learning so that you don't make the same mistakes I do. It doesn't mean that challenging somebody who's saying something that seems off isn't valid or justifiable. But what I'm saying is, and especially as a white person or as a woman or as a person who maybe doesn't belong to those DEI categories, I just want to remind you of a few key things today as you go forward. The first thing you want to remember is knowing the intentions of the speaker, and getting clarity is what's required so that you have the confidence to respond accordingly. So when somebody says or does something, whether it's online or in a meeting, that you find offensive or that you are reacting to, there's a few things I want you to do. I want you to pause. I did not. I want you to pause and ask yourself a few things. One is, what's the context of this particular comment or this particular discussion point or statement that they're bringing to the table? Do you understand, or do I understand what was meant by that statement? Why am I challenging this? Like, what part of this is really offending me, or what part of this is really triggering me, and why? Where am I feeling it in my body, and what emotions coming up for me? Is it because the comment itself was hurtful and discriminatory towards me myself? Is it a generalized comment? Really understanding the rationale behind what triggered you, but more importantly, the rationale behind the comment or the statement that triggered you is really important. So the clearer about the intentions of the individual who's stating these things and the circumstances will make you more confident and focused on how you respond. So in my experience, acting with purpose, especially when you're standing up to somebody, will help you to navigate that conversation. So with integrity rather than with reactivity, which is not what you want to do. The second thing is anchor yourself in your values and your own personal ethics. Your courage is going to be rooted in your values. So when we face moments of challenge, we need to really get clear about what our values are and stand firm in them. So things like respect, fairness, inclusivity, whatever those values are, you have a right to be rooted in those values. When you respond, you should be able to respond from a place of integrity if you stay aligned with those boundaries. For me, respect was probably a boundary I crossed in that how I responded to this individual may have been disrespectful to that individual. That said, though, the comment and the reaction to the comment may have been valid, but what I didn't do was a few things down the road that I'm going to talk about here in this video or in this content piece today. The third thing is frame it as a conversation, not as a battle. And this is where I really went wrong in that interaction. When we feel offense or when we feel that somebody said or did something that we really feel strongly about, it can put us in a defensive mode or in fight flight. In my case, it was fight. When you respond with that, things can escalate really quickly. So you go from being curious and having a conversation about it to just going to battle and just defeating. You have to win because you need to prove them wrong in some way, right? I have spent my entire life battling. So therefore, that was sort of like this old neural pathway that I've been working on undoing and rewriting in my brain. That was an old neural pathway that came up in a moment where I've been struggling psychologically and mentally with my own personal health over the last few weeks. And so it was just one of those things that just escalated really quickly. So instead, what you should be doing is approaching the situation with curiosity and a willingness to hear the other person. As difficult as this can be, positioning this as a conversation rather than a battle is going to be key to you showing up in integrity. In my own experience, I found that when I go straight to attack mode or to kill mode, all it does is destroy relationships. And maybe that relationship needed to go by the wayside. Maybe we don't align. But the reality is that how that happened is probably not ideal. Take small risks to build courage. So if you lack courage to speak up for yourself, and some people have a hard time with this, especially when somebody says something to you that is obviously discriminatory or obviously offensive, start with small things. Simply say things like, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Or you say things like, I think that perspective might be harmful. Or what's behind that comment? Or what is it about that comment that you felt was okay? So just taking small steps and asking questions and being curious is important for you to start developing that courage muscle around speaking your truth. The next thing is stay calm and centered and under control. Again, where I kind of lost it a little bit on this one, because what I did is I took that person's post and I highlighted it in one of my social media channels and did a video about it. I've since removed it because that's not who I want to be. But the message within that video, I still believe in 100%. And I'm still going to challenge anybody who talks about discrimination or bias in the workplace like that. But how I responded was not necessarily the way to go, if that makes any sense. So take a moment to breathe, to pause, to collect your thoughts and stay focused, because you want to make sure you don't react impulsively. That's really, really important. And the last thing I'm going to say is sometimes you're going to misstep. Sometimes you're going to say things they don't agree with you. Sometimes they're going to end a conversation or relationship with you. Be okay with it. Be willing to let it go, and give yourself the freedom to let it go, because you're not necessarily going to maintain relationships with everybody forever. Maybe there's something in there that was meant to fall away by the wayside. Maybe there's a disconnect in how we believe in things, and that's okay. I just want you to be able to remain in integrity to who you are and who you want to be, rather than maybe who you were programmed to be by toxic parents, toxic relationships, or toxic friendships. Seek support, because courage is a practice, and being willing to speak your voice is a practice. And when you make mistakes, have some self-compassion and don't be too hard on yourself, because we're human. We have rough days, rough weeks, and sometimes we say or do things that mess things up. That's okay. That's life. That's the way it goes. You just move on and do better the next time. Anyway, thanks again for being here at Executive Exhale. If you got anything out of this podcast or out of this video, give it a like, subscribe, follow, because I am here pretty much weekly providing some sort of wellness/leadership content. And I'm just so, so grateful that you are here in this moment. And I hope to see you in future episodes. So with that, stay grounded, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.